All right, get ready because today we are going to dive deep into some sales psychology.
Ooh,
Yeah, but
fun.
we found this fascinating training program, and it
Okay.
claims to reveal how top salespeople use techniques that almost border on hypnosis.
That's a bold claim.
Yeah, and don't worry though, we're only interested in the ethical persuasion stuff,
Of course, of
not
course.
anything shady.
Yeah, you know what's really intriguing about this whole thing is how these techniques just leverage like natural
Yeah.
tendencies in our brains, like
Right.
things that we might not even realize are influencing us.
Yeah, it's like they've cracked the code to human behavior,
Hmm.
and then they use that to kind of nudge people towards a yes.
Exactly. You know, this program even calls it mesmerizing selling,
Okay.
which I think sounds a lot better than
Yeah.
manipulative sales tactics 101.
Right, it sounds so much more appealing.
Yeah, they're kind of framing it as like an art form,
Yeah.
which it is in a way.
It is, yeah.
It's all about psychology
Yeah.
and persuasion and using that to just create a story that like really resonates with the listener.
Yeah, so how do they actually do that? The program mentions conversational hypnosis,
Uh-huh.
which I gotta admit sounds a little intimidating.
Yeah, I understand the hesitation.
Yeah.
But it's not about mind control or anything like that.
Okay.
It's more about speaking in a way that like
Yeah.
bypasses the listener's defenses
Right.
and lets the message sink in.
Okay, so not like swinging a pocket watch
No.
and saying you're getting sleepy.
Whoa, not at all.
Okay,
It's much more subtle than that.
so more like guiding the conversation so that they're more receptive
Yeah.
to what you have to say.
Exactly. It's more about like planting seeds of suggestion
Yeah.
in the listener's subconscious.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how this connects back to that mesmerizing selling.
Mm-hmm.
It's about captivating the listener, but subtly guiding them
Yeah.
towards that decision.
Exactly. And they do this through all these different types of suggestions.
Okay.
They have verbal suggestions, nonverbal suggestions,
Hold on.
intraverbal and extraverbal.
Break that down a little bit.
Okay, so imagine you're a salesperson talking to a potential customer.
Okay.
Verbal suggestions are the words you choose.
Okay.
Nonverbal is your body language,
Okay.
your tone of voice, your facial expressions.
Mhm.
Intraverbal suggestions are the questions that you ask and how you structure the conversation.
Okay.
And then extraverbal suggestions are things like the environment you're in or even like the music playing in the background.
Wow. So you're creating this whole experience
Exactly.
that is multisensory, that's designed
Yes.
to influence the listener on all these different levels.
Precisely. And when you combine all of those,
Yeah.
they become really, really powerful.
Yeah, I was reading about the technique of mirroring body language,
Mm-hmm.
where you subtly mimic the customer's movements to build rapport.
Yes.
Is that an example of a nonverbal suggestion?
That's a perfect example
Yeah.
because it really taps into our like natural tendency to trust people who seem like us.
Yeah.
So if you're mirroring their body language, you're kind of sending this subconscious message that
Yeah.
says, hey, we're on the same team.
Right. It's like you're similar.
Exactly.
Okay. So are there any other nonverbal cues that salespeople use to build rapport?
Oh, tons of them.
Right.
Things like matching their breathing patterns,
Wow.
adjusting your tone of voice to match theirs, or even using similar hand gestures can have a huge impact on building that connection.
So it's like a subconscious dance between the two people.
Exactly.
Okay. So this is where it gets really mind-blowing for me.
Okay.
The program also mentions that salespeople use hypnotic phenomena
Right.
like amnesia
Hypnotic.
and revivification to influence buying decisions.
Yes.
Okay, we're not talking like swinging pocket watches here.
No. No hypnotist stage here.
Okay.
These are everyday things
Right.
that we all experience.
Right.
But master salespeople have learned to leverage them strategically.
Right.
For instance, amnesia isn't about like making someone forget their own name.
Right.
It's more about subtly making a competitor's product
Oh.
less memorable.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're directing their attention away from the competition
Exact.
and towards what you have to offer.
You got it.
Okay, interesting. What about hypermnesia?
Uh-huh.
Is that like the opposite of amnesia?
You got it.
Okay.
Hypermnesia is all about making your product impossible to forget.
Okay.
Think about those like catchy jingles or slogans that get stuck in your head.
Yeah.
That's hypermnesia in action.
Okay, so you're creating a lasting impression
Yes.
to make it stand out.
Precisely.
And then there's revivification,
Yes.
which kind of sounds like a sci-fi movie,
It does.
but it's a psychological thing.
It is a real phenomenon.
Okay. All ears. Tell me more.
Think about like a time when a certain smell or song brought back a flood of memories.
Oh, yeah.
That's revivification.
Oh,
The act of bringing those past experiences back to life.
yeah.
And salespeople use this by evoking positive memories and then subtly linking those feelings to their product.
So if you're selling a luxury car, you might ask them about their favorite childhood road trip.
Exactly.
With their family.
That's a great example.
And then suggest that your car will create even better memories on road trips.
Precisely. You're tapping into those positive emotions and associating them with your product.
So it goes beyond logic.
Exactly.
And reason at that point.
It's about creating an emotional connection.
Wow. I'm starting to see how these complex psychological concepts can be used in a practical way.
Absolutely. And you can't really talk about hypnotic communication without mentioning the master himself, Milton Erickson.
Okay.
He wasn't just a world-renowned hypnotist.
Yeah.
He was also a brilliant salesman.
Yeah.
He used language to influence people in profound ways.
All right, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about Milton Erickson and his approach to sales.
So Erickson believed that everyone already has the resources that they need to solve their own problems. And his approach to hypnosis was all about helping people access those resources. So instead of imposing his will on people, he would guide them towards their own solutions.
Yeah, that sounds much more ethical and sustainable.
Right. It's not about manipulation. It's about empowerment.
Yeah, and he did this through storytelling and metaphors and subtle suggestions.
Yeah, he was a master of language.
Okay.
And there's this really interesting story about a medical student who absolutely hated psychiatry.
Oh, yeah. Didn't Erickson totally change this guy's mind?
He did.
On the subject.
Yeah, he completely changed his perspective.
After just one conversation.
It was amazing just through conversation.
That's wild.
And it's a perfect example of how Erickson used conversational hypnosis to reshape someone's whole worldview.
Wow, that's incredible.
He didn't argue with him or force his opinions on him.
Right.
He just used language and stories to guide him towards a new understanding.
So it highlights the power of language to influence.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Erickson broke his approach down into 4 steps.
It did. 4 key steps.
Okay, and this is relevant for salespeople, marketers. Pretty much anyone who wants to be persuasive.
Anyone who wants to communicate effectively.
Yeah. All right. So let's break down those 4 steps.
Okay.
What's the first one?
Okay. So the first step is capturing the listener's attention.
Okay.
That's pretty basic, but crucial.
Yeah. You got to hook them in.
You got to grab their interest, whether it's with a question, a story, a surprising statistic.
It's like that saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
First impressions are everything.
All right, so once you have their attention, then what?
Then you got to establish trust.
Okay.
And you do that by presenting agreeable ideas.
So finding common ground.
Yes, finding common ground.
Yeah, building rapport.
Building rapport, showing that you understand them.
Instead of just launching into your pitch.
Exactly. You want them to feel like you're on their side.
Okay, so you're building that foundation.
Yes, building that foundation of trust.
Of trust first.
And then you can move on to step 3.
Okay, step 3, this is where it gets interesting.
This is where it gets juicy.
Okay.
This is about increasing the need to take action by challenging their fixed mental habits.
Okay, hold on. How do you challenge someone's beliefs without making them defensive?
It's all about subtlety.
Okay.
You're not trying to attack them or make them feel stupid.
Yeah.
You're just gently nudging them to see things from a different perspective.
So you might ask them a thought-provoking question.
Yes, a thought-provoking question that challenges their assumptions. Or you might present them with new information that kind of contradicts their existing beliefs.
Okay, so you're creating a little bit of dissonance.
Exactly, a little bit of cognitive dissonance, that uncomfortable feeling you get when your beliefs are challenged.
Yeah, and that makes them more open to new ideas.
Exactly, because when people feel uncomfortable, they're more likely to look for new information.
Makes sense.
And consider different perspectives.
Okay, and then once they're open to new ideas?
Yeah, then comes step 4.
Step 4, what's that?
Providing a clear path to follow.
Okay, so you've hooked them, you've built trust.
Yes.
You've challenged their assumptions. And now you're giving them a solution.
Exactly. You're guiding them toward a decision.
All right, so it's like a recipe for success.
It really is a recipe for success.
Yeah.
And the best part is it can be used in so many areas of life.
That's true, not just sales.
Not just sales.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that this program has a lot of real-world examples.
There are tons of them.
Yeah. Did any of them really stand out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. There's this one about Michael Steele.
Okay.
He was a productivity consultant,
Okay.
but he kind of unexpectedly became like a sales superstar.
Oh.
Yeah, he was selling millions of dollars
Wow.
worth of consulting projects.
This is impressive.
Yeah, and he even helped other people get jobs.
That's awesome.
It was really cool.
Okay, so what was his secret weapon?
He kind of mastered this combination of sales, scripting, storytelling, and of course, mesmerizing salesmanship.
Okay, I'm definitely going to have to look into sales scripting and storytelling.
Yeah.
But first, let's go back to those hypnotic phenomena.
Yes.
Amnesia, hypermnesia, and revivification.
Uh-huh.
Did this program give any examples of how salespeople actually use these?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Let's take amnesia, for example.
Okay.
Imagine you're a salesperson, and your customer is like overwhelmed with information from all your competitors.
Right, it's like information overload.
Exactly. They can't keep track of all the details. So a smart salesperson can use that to their advantage.
So are you saying they try to make people forget about the competition? How do they even do that?
It's all about shifting the focus.
Okay.
They might say something like, you know, other companies try to bombard you with all these tiny details.
Right.
It's impossible to remember much about their products.
Yeah.
But with ours, the benefits are clear and simple and memorable.
Oh, wow, that's subtle.
It is subtle.
But it plants that seed.
It plants a seed of
forgetfulness.
Exactly.
Okay, so then hypermnesia would be like making their product stick in the customer's mind.
You got it.
Instead of getting lost in the details.
Yeah, they might say something like, you'll remember this feature, trust me. It's going to change the way you work.
Oh, so it's like you're giving their brain a command.
Yeah, in a way you are.
Okay.
It's about framing it.
Yeah.
In a way that makes their brain prioritize that information.
Okay. I think I get amnesia and hypermnesia.
Okay.
But revivification is still a little bit of a mystery.
Okay, so remember we talked about how revivification is about bringing those past experiences back to life.
Yeah.
So the program gave this great example of a salesperson selling a yacht.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Okay, so they might start by asking the customer,
Yeah.
do you remember that feeling of freedom and excitement you had when you got your first bike as a kid?
Oh, yeah, everyone remembers that.
Exactly, it's universal.
Yeah.
And while they're feeling all those positive emotions, the salesperson seamlessly connects it to the yacht.
Okay.
They might say something like, imagine experiencing that same feeling of freedom every time you step on this yacht.
Yeah.
The open water, the wind in your hair.
Oh, it's powerful.
It's like reliving that childhood joy all over again.
Wow. Yeah, they're anchoring those positive emotions to the yacht.
Exactly.
It's not just a boat anymore.
It's an experience.
Yeah.
It's a feeling.
Okay. And the program also mentions that revivification isn't limited to positive emotions.
That's right.
Sometimes negative emotions can be even more effective.
They can be.
Okay. How do you use negative emotions ethically in sales, though?
It's all about framing.
Okay.
Let's say you're selling Keyman insurance to a business owner.
Yeah.
You might say something like, imagine what would happen to your company if you were suddenly gone. Who would take care of your employees? Would your family be able to keep the business afloat?
Okay, those are some tough questions.
They are tough questions.
And important.
But they're important for a business owner to consider.
Yeah.
It's not about scaring them. It's about highlighting a potential risk that they might not have thought about. And showing them how your product can provide that peace of mind.
So you're appealing to that desire to avoid pain.
Exactly. We're motivated by pain and pleasure.
Yeah. All right, so beyond just mirroring body language, what else are we mirroring?
So think about communication styles.
Okay.
Some people are very direct and to the point. Other people are more indirect and nuanced. So by paying attention to how your customer communicates and adjusting your style to match theirs, you create that instant connection.
It's like, I get you. I speak your language.
Exactly. And it's not just about words.
Okay.
It's also about your tone, your pace, your energy level.
Right.
If they're really animated and enthusiastic, you want to match that.
Yeah.
But if they're more reserved and thoughtful, you got to adjust.
Okay. So you got to read the room a little bit.
Exactly. Read the room.
Yeah.
And one of the most powerful ways to mirror and match is by reflecting their values.
Mirroring their values. What does that look like?
So it's about figuring out what's important to them and framing your product or service in a way that aligns with those values.
So if they're really environmentally conscious,
Yeah.
You might emphasize the sustainable features
Exactly.
of your product.
Or if they're all about efficiency, you might highlight how your product can save them time.
So it's not about changing your values.
Right.
It's about showing that you understand.
Yes. It's about finding that resonance where your values intersect.
Okay. And the program also talked about storytelling.
Oh, yes. Storytelling.
Why are stories so effective?
Stories bypass our logical filters and speak directly to our emotions. They create a shared experience that builds trust.
Makes sense.
It's like inviting them into your world
Right.
and letting them see things from your perspective.
Yeah, it's like facts tell.
Yeah.
But stories sell.
Exactly. Think about some of the most successful advertising campaigns.
Yeah.
They're not just listing features and benefits.
Right, they're telling stories.
They're telling stories.
Yeah, okay, so how can salespeople use storytelling effectively? Do you just make stuff up?
No, you don't want to lie or mislead people.
Right.
The best stories are authentic and relatable. Customer testimonials are a great example.
Yeah.
Real stories from real people.
Social proof?
Exactly, social proof.
Okay.
And the more relatable and authentic the story, the more impact it will have.
Okay.
You can also use metaphors and analogies.
Also explain complex ideas.
Yes, because they create these vivid pictures in the listener's mind.
So instead of saying our software is user-friendly, you might say using our software is like having a personal assistant who can anticipate your every need.
You got it. Metaphors are powerful.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here.
We have.
But there's one big elephant in the room.
Oh.
Resistance.
Yes, resistance. The salesperson's constant companion.
Yeah, every salesperson faces objections.
They do.
Pushback from customers.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
But this program actually has some really interesting insights into how to deal with those situations.
All right, I'm all ears.
Okay, so one of the most counterintuitive things they recommend
Yeah.
is actually encouraging resistance.
Wait, encouraging resistance?
Yeah.
I thought the goal was to overcome it.
Well, that's the conventional wisdom.
Okay.
But sometimes the best way to overcome resistance
Yeah.
is to lean into it.
Okay, I'm confused. Give me an example.
Okay, let's say you're selling a high-end product, and the customer says, I need to shop around.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to convince them to buy right now, you could say, you know what, you're absolutely right. You should always do your research before making a big investment.
Yeah.
In fact, I encourage you to spend a few days checking out the competition.
Wow.
Really get a feel for what's out there.
Yeah.
And then when you're ready, come back and let's talk.
So you're giving them permission to resist.
Exactly.
Okay, and why is that effective?
Well, for a few reasons.
Okay.
First, it shows confidence. It's like you're saying, I'm not afraid of you comparing my product to the competition.
It's like taking the wind out of their sails.
Exactly.
Right.
Second, it subtly shifts their mindset.
How so?
Now, instead of resisting you,
Yeah.
they're resisting the idea of not checking out the competition.
Oh, so you're turning their resistance on its head.
You got it.
Okay.
And finally, it gives them a chance to see for themselves that your product is the best.
Yeah, because comparison shopping is exhausting.
It can be a lot of work.
Right.
So they might just decide it's not worth it.
So it's a win-win.
It is a win-win.
They either come back more convinced or they realize it's not worth the hassle.
Exactly. And this is just one example of how to reframe resistance as an opportunity.
Okay.
There are so many other techniques that we could talk about.
Yeah, we've only got so much time.
I know.
But I definitely want to unpack some more of those techniques.
Let's do it.
Yeah. I want to know how they suggest handling those classic objections, like it's too expensive or I need to think about it.
Those are great ones, and I think you'll be surprised by what they say.
Okay, so let's dive into those classic objections and how to handle them.
Okay.
What about the dreaded, it's too expensive?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like every salesperson has heard that one.
It's a classic, but instead of getting defensive or justifying the price, this program recommends a totally different approach.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
They say agree with them.
What?
Yeah. Agree with the customer.
Okay.
You could say something like, you're absolutely right. It is expensive, and that's because it's the best.
Okay.
It's designed for people who want the highest quality and are willing to invest in it.
So you're not arguing or trying to say it's a good deal?
Yeah.
You're just agreeing.
You're agreeing with them.
Okay.
And by doing that, you're kind of taking the wind out of their sails. Yeah.
Because they were expecting an argument.
Right.
And now you're on their side.
It's disarming.
It's a really clever tactic.
Yeah.
Because it reframes the whole objection.
Yeah.
You're acknowledging it's not the cheapest.
Right.
But you're emphasizing the value.
Right. So it's like that velvet rope strategy. It makes it seem more desirable because it's exclusive.
Precisely. And by agreeing, you also create this opportunity to talk about the benefits.
Yes.
So you can say something like, yes, it's an investment, but consider what you're getting in return. Okay. And then list all the benefits.
So you turn the price objection into a value proposition.
Exactly.
Okay, that's smart. What about, I need to think about it.
Another classic.
Yeah, that one feels like a brush off.
It can, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay.
The program says that usually means one of two things.
Okay.
Either they're genuinely undecided.
Okay.
Or they're just trying to say no politely.
Okay, so how do you figure out which one it is? You ask clarifying questions.
Okay.
You could say, I understand it's important to make the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
What specifically would you like to think about?
Okay.
Or what information would help you make a decision?
So you're not pressuring them.
No, you're giving them space to think.
Right.
And if they're really undecided, this gives you a chance to address their concerns.
Right.
But if they're just avoiding saying no, they'll probably give a vague answer.
Like, I got to talk to my spouse.
Exactly.
Or I need to check my budget.
Yeah. And in those cases, it's best to just respect their decision and not push.
Don't be pushy.
Don't be pushy. You could just say, I understand. Here's my card. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Give them an out.
Exactly. And you never know. They might reach out later.
They might.
After they've had time to think.
Wow. This has been a really interesting deep dive.
It has been fascinating.
Yeah. I feel like I've learned so much about how to influence people ethically.
Yeah, and I hope our listeners realize that persuasion isn't about manipulation. It's about communication and connection.
Absolutely. And these techniques are just tools.
Yeah.
They can be used for good or bad.
That's true.
It's up to us to use them responsibly.
Absolutely. And if you're ever on the receiving end of these tactics, I hope you'll be aware enough to recognize them and make good decisions.
Knowledge is power.
It is.
The more we know about how our minds work,
the
better we can navigate the world.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe you'll even start using some of these techniques yourself.
That's true.
To achieve your goals and create positive change.
To our listener, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
On this journey into sales psychology.
It's been fun.
We hope you've learned something new.
We hope you enjoyed it.
And maybe even gained some insights.
Yes.
That you can apply in your own life.
Whether you're in sales or just navigating everyday interactions.
That's true.
The ability to influence and persuade is a valuable skill.
It is.
It can open doors and create opportunities.
All right. Until next time.
Yes.
Keep learning. Keep growing.
Keep diving deep.
And keep diving deep.